Well, hello. Thanks for joining us today for my first podcast and selected a superstar and longtime friend, Heather Williams Forshey, who owns Raleigh Divorce Law Firm. And the content today was basically covering 5 things that you need to think about if you're getting a separation or divorce. And Heather's obviously an expert in this field and just would love her input out there. And our goal is to just try to add value to consumers and help you get some good information to help you make good decisions. So thank you for your time, Heather. And
absolutely.
Thank you for being a great customer, first off. You and Nate been friends for a long time, and we do security for your office and the home. And thank you so much for your business. That means a lot.
Happy to refer people to great people that provide great services.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And first thing I'd like to talk about is, would you mind spending a little time talking about your background and maybe what made you get into the field?
Sure. So I was a psychology major at Elon, and so through that major, I had to do an internship through an agency called Sentencing Services, which worked mostly with criminal defendants, trying to find services for them, such as substance abuse, treatment, and mental health services. And so through that internship, I ended up spending a lot of time at the courthouse. And that's how I first kind of became interested in law. And at that point, kind of transitioned into pre-law and wanting to take the LSATs and go to law school. And so after my undergrad, I ended up working for an agency called Head Start. And they are an agency that provides education services to low-income families and families with children who have special needs. And so through that, I really became interested in working with families and children. So really, family law for me is really the intersection of the people part of it, working with families and trying to help children and families, but also the legal aspect of it as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, I could see how that's a natural fit, and you kind of slide down a career path and end up where you're at. I definitely think it's important to have a passion for what you do, and just knowing you and not only being a great business owner, but having a passion for what you do is obviously very important. So without delay, we'll just jump into if I'm someone that's thinking about separating or getting a divorce, what are 5 things that I should be thinking?
So the first thing is counseling. That's something I talk to people about in the initial consultation, and I spend time talking to them about where they're at in terms of their marriage, and are they really willing to pull that trigger and separate, because I find that I get a lot of people who aren't sure. And they don't really know whether they want to try to stay in the marriage or not. And so before people make a huge life decision like that, I encourage them to suggest marriage counseling to their spouse or get some individual counseling for themselves so that they can really be sure as they move forward in the process that it's what they want to do. Because obviously you're spending money on attorneys. And the other problem that I see a lot with people who are starting this process is their spouse may not have any idea where they're at emotionally. So it's really good before people jump into the legal process that both spouses are on the same page. And what I mean by that is I tell many people in our consultation process, do not let the first news that you are wanting to separate or divorce from your spouse be the letter that they get from me in the mail saying that I represent you. There's obviously certain circumstances like domestic violence or cases where there's safety concerns where there's just no other way to do it. But absent that, I always tell people, really the first conversation about the ending of your marriage needs to come between you all and not come from a letter that someone gets from me in the mail.
Is it primarily the guys that are just oblivious?
No, I find it on both sides.
Okay.
And I think it's really difficult, and it usually ends up making the divorce a lot more high conflict when one person feels completely blindsided. Today, the term for it, that's the buzzword, is ghosted. When you just ghost someone and kind of just end the relationship with no real explanation, and just kind of want to disappear from the other person's life without warning. So I usually advise people to really think about the manner in which they want to move forward in the process, because it can make it a lot less messy and a lot less expensive if you try to really approach the process with having respect for the other person.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. Number two, what do you think?
Number two, I would say, is logistically, what is the plan for separating and who's going to move and where are you going to move to? And I think that this has the biggest impact really in situations that involve children in custody, because as you know, even in Wake County, being a very large county, I mean, it can take 30 to 45 minutes just for me to get to my home, to get to my office. So for parties that have children, where you live can have a big impact on what your custody schedule may look like, and also how feasible it is for you to exercise a custody schedule where you're having joint custody or having frequent exchanges. You need to try to be somewhere in close proximity to your children's school and their activities. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to live across the street from your former spouse or live in the same neighborhood as them, even though some people do that. But you need to try to figure out how to not be in two separate communities if you're wanting to exercise a 50-50 or 2-2-3 custodial schedule.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense for sure. Number three?
So number three is, if you are thinking about pursuing separation and divorce, getting financial statements together is probably the biggest headache for people and the thing that they don't want to do once that they've retained. But that is the thing that, whether your case is going into litigation or your case is going to mediation or you're just trying to negotiate through attorneys, we really can't do anything without having financial documents. It's a huge malpractice issue for someone to come in and say, oh, well, let me write down on a piece of paper what all my assets and debts are, and we don't actually have any paperwork to back up what that is. It's especially important in cases where there's one spouse who has not had a lot of knowledge or involvement with the finances, because once people start going through that separation and divorce process, the other spouse, in some cases, may deny them access to financial information, or if they're not living in the same house anymore, they just may not have as much access to get the statements directly. So I usually advise people to start getting together the last 3 to 5 years of their tax returns, the last 1 to 3 years of bank and credit card statements, any recent retirement account statements, and things like that, because those are things that your lawyer's going to need no matter which direction your case is going. And if you have those things up front, then you not only have the information you need to prepare, but your lawyer is going to be better able to give you advice on what the financial terms of your separation and divorce may look like.
Makes a lot of sense. So, next up?
Number 4, I would say, is social media and privacy concerns. This is a huge issue today that wasn't necessarily a huge issue back in 2006 when I started practicing. But people who are contemplating separation and divorce need to be careful what they are posting on their Facebook and social media pages. Please refrain from trying to make negative comments about your spouse or talk about the divorce or separation process or things that are going on with your legal matters. It's just not helpful to post those types of things online. The other thing that you need to be careful about is any emails that you're sending, any text messages that you are sending. All of those things are subject to discovery if your case ends up going south and there are issues of infidelity or issues of other marital misconduct that are going to make your case ugly. You need to be aware that all of that can potentially be viewed at a later point. And deleting stuff or trying to erase stuff often is not effective. And if that is discovered, it can often make your situation worse and make you look more guilty. And that goes hand in hand with, as we've entered this electronic age, there's a lot of rules about spoliation of evidence and destroying evidence. So the other thing I tell people is, if you have already received a letter from an attorney representing your spouse, or there's already litigation going on in your case, there are rules that you're expected to know and you're expected to follow, even if you're not given a copy of them. And the rules are, you can't then go out and destroy evidence that you're trying to protect from coming out in the litigation. So don't go out and sell your cell phone on Craigslist. Don't take your computer hard drive and try to smash it up with a hammer. It's better to just confront everything head on if the information is asked for in discovery, because if you're caught destroying evidence once your case is in litigation, you're going to be in a lot more trouble than if you tell your attorney what's going on and deal with it head on.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So, in other words, don't be out making it rain on social media if you're battling in court over and talking about numbers.
Absolutely.
And you're crying the blues to the judge. That makes a lot of sense.
Also, don't make negative comments about your judge on social media. I see a lot of that in my work as a parenting coordinator and dealing with families who've already kind of been through the process, people that don't get the result that they want are posting things about people in the judicial system, and then their case goes back to court, and all of that is out there. So Be careful what you post.
Yeah, I can imagine. You're going to be pretty well known to the judge.
Yes.
Potentially, not in a good way. And
yes.
The last thing.
So the last thing would be, don't react out of anger and taking actions such as removing your spouse from your health insurance policy, your life insurance policy, changing beneficiary designations on things. Just wait. Wait and make sure you're doing it the right way. Make sure that you are discussing that with your attorney, discussing that with your spouse, and reaching agreements on that before you do that. Because often taking those actions without an agreement being negotiated and without your spouse's knowledge is viewed as vindictive. It's not helpful to the resolution of your case. And so you definitely need to discuss those things with a lawyer before you start taking those types of actions.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And, one of the things that I've definitely learned in my 25 years as an adult basically is that, being proactive versus reactive is always smart. And that's part of what this video is designed to do, to basically get the counsel of a professional before you go out and start doing things. Old saying, ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure, so definitely appreciate you sharing a lot of this good information for people. And if you're thinking about going through this, it's a good idea to obviously contact a professional, get some guidance. We hope this video certainly helped. And is there anything else you'd want to wrap up? Just good information that someone should know, or anything else you want to close with?
I think it's a good idea for people to go meet with an attorney to do a consultation, regardless of which direction their case is going, because like you said, I tell people most of the cases that end up being high dollar cases for my firm are people who've tried to do it themselves, and then it's blown up. And so even if you are going to reach an agreement, my advice would be to have an attorney draft that agreement. And my firm and many other firms will do that for just a very low cost flat fee for people. And at least you know that your document has been drafted correctly and you're not going to run into issues in the future with regards to the document itself.
So basically doing it right rather than going to have to back up and clean up a bunch of mess.
Right, and even if you're in complete agreement, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can just make sure that the lawyer drafts up the document that reflects the agreement your spouse has reached with you, and have the security of knowing that that's going to be a legally enforceable document and one that's going to be in place for years to come.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Heather, and hopefully this added some value to you. Again, Heather Forshey here in North Raleigh. Reach out, and part of the best, highly rated on Google and review sites. So thank you for your time, and hope this helped.
Thank you.